as well as the team that you're working with, whether Colab or Rule of Law, Justice, Human Rights team. I think let's maybe get started. So formally, hello colleagues, and a very, very warm welcome to you all to this Justice Futures Colab session. We are going to be discussing on leveraging the Accelerator labs for localized justice solutions. I am truly, truly pleased that we are doing this session today as yet another example or another demonstration of cross-team collaboration, demonstrating the strong integration of areas of work and expertise in UNDP. And in this case, we have the rule of law, justice, human rights teams, depending on how teams are named at country level, but through the Justice Futures Colab, as well as the Accelerator Lab, which is really a huge network, as all of you already know, of experts working as an incubator for the future and accelerating progress towards 2030. I'm truly, truly delighted to see so many of you online. And for the Accelerator Lab colleagues, you might already be recognizing, of course, Gina, who is online, as well as Eduardo, who are really your co-conspirators, should I say, in terms of doing this very important and key work on closing the gap between the fast developing challenges we are having in the development space and developing those fast solutions to be able to catch up but provide opportunities for sustainable development. My name is Reva Makanje Obek, and I am the UNDP Global Lead on Justice and Security with the UNDP Governance, Rule of Law, and Peace Building Hub based in New York. And it is my pleasure to moderate the conversation today. And perhaps just as a start, I couldn't help but say this, to say the Accelerator Labs, I think when they were launched, it was absolutely a big thing. And I will not say too much because I'll leave this for Gina to say when she gives her concluding remarks, but definitely designed to close this huge gap, which I referred to much earlier, to accelerate the pace of development and the pace of change. The Justice Futures Colab, on the other hand, is a space for working both virtually and in person, and that aims to convene a diverse range of people, of expertise and perspectives to collectively explore, also to experiment and co-create solutions to complex justice challenges. And as we know, our justice challenges are even getting more and more complex as our world is getting more and more riddled with conflicts, with multiple crises. We talk about the age of the polycrisis, but I know recently in the RR retreat in Joburg, if for those of you who followed, there was also the conversation to say, let's not talk of the polycrisis, but let's talk of the polytunity, rather the opportunity, which is multi-pronged, where we are able to hit onto these challenges head on. And I do believe that the space where innovation meets is that space where that opportunity becomes a reality. So for me, this is really an important and critical space of convergence of purpose and a convergence of objective, which we definitely need to optimize in UNDP. So in many ways, this is a much highly anticipated session on justice innovation, where we are having in the same colleagues from Rule of Law, specialists, as well as our very innovative Accelerator Labs. We are well aware, and I think these are statistics that are very apparent based on the SDG reports that are produced by UNDP, SDG 16 reports produced by UNDP, UNODC, and OECD, OSHR, that there is a lot of data and evidence on how this SDG 16, broadly speaking, is not doing well. We also have a lot of data and evidence that is also clearly indicating that we have a widening justice gap. The challenges and inadequacies of both the formal justice system, the informal justice system, compounded by the multiple crises, the fragilities, and the conflict settings, really is asking us, we need to do more. So in many ways, the myriad of challenges that we are facing is a clarion call for us to really begin to think and to continue. For those we have already been doing this, but for those we haven't started, to start thinking innovation and how do we how do we roll out this innovation in a way that meets the challenges? Maybe let me just add one more complexity to this challenge, which is basically to say, in addition to everything else that I have said, we know that development support to rule of law and justice continues to diminish. So we are really in a very critical period where for real, the need for us to be more innovative, to work collectively as a system to address these justice challenges, the call for us to do so is much louder than ever before. So before I call on to our speakers, because I'm really, really happy and enthused that we are having three countries who are going to be presenting and showcasing their good and exemplary justice innovation examples. I'm not saying these are the only countries, but these are the three that could pick at this particular point. And it is important that we do listen and hear from them, explaining how they have managed to innovate on justice. We are going to use this opportunity while as they speak to also exchange on the challenges as well as the opportunities. And also critically important for all of us sitting in the room is for us to be able to identify the next steps to foster the justice innovation challenges, the justice innovations to meet the challenges and the innovations between rule of law and justice teams, as well as the Accelerator labs, while of course receiving quite a lot of support through the Justice Futures Colab, which is sitting within the global program of the rule of law, justice, and human rights in UNDP. So I don't want to speak any longer. I will take this opportunity for us to delve into the substance of the discussion today. And I'm pleased we have this solid lineup of expert practitioners who will speak to us on the issues. And I will introduce them in turn as they come to take the floor. But very, very quickly, colleagues, before I do introduce them, and this is the last announcement that I will make, please don't forget to put your names, the country offices you are coming from, and the team that you belong to in the chat box. We are going to be having an interactive session, and I know this is one thing that is clearly important whenever we talk about work on innovation. We cannot just have talking without interaction, and this is important, and we'll do this through the surveys and the different survey questions that have been designed for us to do this. And with that said, I would like to hand over to Roman Meyer, who is the justice analyst with the Governance, Rule of Law, and Peace Building Hub in UNDP, for him to do the initial polling exercise for us and also to do an overarching presentation to frame the discussion for today. So over to you, Roman.
Thank you so much, Revai, and also from my side, colleagues, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I see we are not more than 60 participants by now, which is great. I do see some colleagues also from Asia Pacific, so very much appreciated that you even join us in your late evening hours. So as Revai said, we want to kickstart the session with a very quick poll of only 2 questions to understand a bit better whom are we having in the room and also what are your specific interests, so we can also steer and structure our conversation accordingly. So let me very quickly launch this poll, which you should see popping up on your screen already at this very moment. So you can see just 2 very small questions. The first question on whether in your current office, the ACLAB team is already having any sort of justice initiative. And then a second question on what you think are the most interesting aspects and the opportunities as we are talking about justice innovation. I just give you a moment to submit your answers.
Yes.
Okay, we are at 50%, so I give you a few more seconds. Okay. Okay, we are above 70%. I was told that's usually already quite a good rate. So let me end the poll and show it right away back to you. Excellent. So you should be seeing the results on your screen. Quite interesting indeed. We have quite a few colleagues in the call who are in an office where currently the ACT labs are already working together with the colleagues on justice, rule of law, human rights. As Rabbi said, we're going to have a few presentations, but also in the subsequent discussion, we're of course very keen to hear about those examples and your perspectives as well. But at the same time, I mean, we nearly have half of the colleagues where the offices are not yet working explicitly together with ACLABS and Justice. So there is a lot of space to exchange, to learn, to be inspired. And we are most definitely also keen to follow up with those offices if interested after this call as we are going ahead. And then I think the second question, also quite interesting. There seems to be a preference that e-justice and the wider realm of digitalization is a very good avenue for innovation. I wouldn't say that, not that surprising neither. And actually, two of the presentations today, they're also going to have an e-justice component. So there is definitely also today a lot of space to discuss. But also about innovative forms of raising legal awareness is considered an interesting opportunity. And I agree very much on that. I think from Ecuador, we are going to get some inspiration on this today as well. Maybe just very quickly, I do hear some sound. So colleagues, if you're not yet on mute, maybe kindly mute you that we avoid any echoes or noises. Thank you so much. So thanks for those answers. I think no need to unpack this too much at this stage, but this is very, very useful so we can also guide a little bit at the subsequent discussions. But in this case, without further ado, let me jump to the presentation that Revi has already been mentioning, where we quickly want to frame a little bit the conversation that we are going to have today, because we recognize we might have some colleagues here in the call that don't have a justice background, that have not yet explicitly been working on UNDP's justice work. So very quickly, I hope you can see the presentation on your screens. Okay, I see that works. Excellent.
Yes, we
So
can.
as said, not everybody might have a justice background. So let me maybe start by really taking a step back and very generally elaborate a little bit of what we actually mean when we talk about justice, or more specifically, when we talk about access to justice. And in simple terms, in everyday language, what we usually mean is about the capacity of people to really resolve their disputes that they may face in the family context, in the work context, maybe disputes over land. But in a wider sense, we also refer to the capacity of people to really know what their legal entitlements are and how they can exercise their rights if they are, for example, a victim of a crime, or maybe even a victim of something as severe as sexual and gender-based violence. And then, even in a more general sense, access to justice work is also always work that thrives on the aspiration to make sure that people that are seeking justice are being treated fairly. So whether people navigate a very formal system with prosecutors, with the police, with the courts, or maybe a more informal context where community leaders are maybe mediating on disputes, we want to make sure with our work that people are treated fairly and that they have good justice quality outcomes. So that's a little bit what we do and what we think about when we talk about access to justice. Now, in terms of the global data, and that's what you can see here on the slide, the situation, in fact, is quite concerning, because it is estimated that more than 60% of the world populations do not have meaningful access to justice. And that includes people that are living in extreme conditions of injustice. For instance, we still have more than 40 million modern slaves. We have hundreds of millions of people that are being affected by conflict, by fragility, by violence, by impunity that substantially impinges on their capacity to actually have meaningful access to justice. So there is a strong recognition that at the global level, we do have a big justice gap, and that we have not been able to effectively close that gap in the last couple of decades. Now, if you look at this, you may think, or you hope, that a lot of resources are being channeled in trying to make sure that we can indeed close this justice gap. But the financial situation indeed is quite a different one. And what we have been able to observe, without even considering what has happened in the last couple of weeks and in the last 2, 3 months, is that there has been a steady decrease of justice funding. So a little bit more than a decade ago, the justice funding was usually between 3 and 4% of the total development aid provided. But as you can see on the left, that has been on a steady decline. And we are now usually in the range of only 1% of all the development aid being channeled into justice work, which is typically less than $3 billion each year for all the countries across the globe. And if you put that into perspective, which I try to do with the visualization on the right, and you compare it, for instance, with education and health, you see that there is very, very little money being directly invested into justice work. And I think that's a little bit the general context in which we also can embed the debate on justice innovation. We do have a big justice gap. We do have a situation of decreasing funding. And we, of course, know that justice is not the one single solution to this problem, which in fact is a very structural and also a political problem. But innovation is one tool that we have. It is one instrument that we have at hand where we can try to leverage and to make sure that the little money we receive on justice, we can invest it smart. We can make sure that we really achieve a sustainable impact on the ground. And that, of course, can also help us then to go back and to fundraise, have a strong track record, and hopefully be able to turn the tide a bit around and make sure that this line that you have seen decreasing only in the last couple of years, that it can go up as well. And that essentially already brings me to my very last point to just frame the conversation today, which is, of course, the recognition that internally in UNDP, there is already a lot of justice innovation going on. We are going to have a couple of presentations today. You see here on the slide a few examples, but we recognize that there are more examples as well, and maybe we have some more colleagues that are able to come in the discussions today as well. But even though there is a lot of innovation, we think there is a scope to accelerate it, there is scope to expand it. So we are very keen to have the discussion today with you to see what you think are opportunities, but also where are the bottlenecks, where are the challenges, and where the global level and the regional colleagues as well can come in to provide support to the country offices that we can expand on justice innovation. So as promised, really just a very quick framing from my side. And I'm, of course, very much looking forward to the country level examples and then to discussion. But for the moment, I would be giving back to you, Reva. You may have a point or two that you want to add. From my side, thank you so much, colleagues, for your attention.
Great. Thank you so much, Roman, for that comprehensive coverage, really, of the work that we are doing on justice. And maybe the only point that I could also add to colleagues, and we could also add it to the chat, is to put the link of the global page, which has a whole list of all the work that we are doing on justice, which ranges, of course, e-justice, customary and informal justice, the work that we are doing on transitional justice, the work on gender justice. So it really, really cuts across many, many, many domains. And per country office, I'm sure there is a whole lot of customization of this particular work that happens. But also, quite importantly, perhaps for me to add that as we do this work on justice, there is always and inherently a connection to the work that we are also doing on people-centered security, noting that sometimes you cannot detangle the justice challenges that people are facing from some of the security, community security angle challenges that communities are also facing. So sometimes some of the programming that we are seeing evolving at country level brings all these elements in a holistic and integrated manner, which makes meaningful solutions for the communities that we serve. With that said, I'm really, really pleased, colleagues, that we do have colleagues coming from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, from Ecuador, as well as colleagues from Eswatini that are going to be sharing with us very specific and concrete examples of the justice innovation work that they have been doing as the Accelerator Labs, as well as the rule of law and justice teams. To start us off on these exciting country examples, I'm calling upon Olivia Bampeti Mufuta, who is the head of solution mapping with the DR Congo country office. Olivia, I don't know if you are ready. If you are, I'm handing over to you so you can take it away. Olivia, please.
Hi, Reve. Hi. Hi. Thank you. And good morning or good day, good evening, everyone, from wherever you are joining. I'm happy and delighted to do this presentation on the behalf of the Colab DRC team. Thank you to Roman and thank you to Gina and all the team for all the good work that we are doing. So mine today is to tell you a bit of what we have been doing. I'd like to underline that it's not a one-person work. It's a work that was conducted as a chain. And I'm just happy to be the one that is presenting it, but my colleague Serge is also with me and might also add some comments. So I won't have a lot to say, but I'll try to go straight to the point. Governance indicators in DRC are generally not good and were not good. And there's been so much effort to improve governance indicator across all sectors, including the justice sector. On this slide that you are seeing, it's a project that was called Boyende Malamu. It is in Lingala language, a Congolese language, which means this is good. From the meaning of the name of the project, we are trying to show a new way of administering justice services and allowing people to have access to justice, because it has been observed that when people go to court and to prison, the justice sector in general, files are still manually managed. And sometimes it takes long, and because some people just sit on document and they won't just do the work that they're supposed to do. And it opens a way to corruption. The level of corruption in DRC is among one of the highest in the world. So the government started, of course, with the help of MONUSCO and UNDP, and sometimes UNODC as well. They started working on the reform of the justice system. We identified some areas that needed assistance, or areas in which we could have an opportunity to do something. So we came up with this Boyende Malamu project. It is a set of 4 solutions, a set of 4 IT solutions that you see on your screen. The first one, SIGE, is a prison information management system that allows to manage prisoners in the prison, because there's been, in the recent years, so much prison break in DRC. And if we didn't have such a software, we're not going to be able to retrieve the people that were in the prison and whom broke out of prison. The second one is the SIGM, the Magistrate Management Information System. There's an issue with the way magistrates are managed, because in some areas that are considered like big cities like Kinshasa, all of them are flocking into here. They don't want to go work in the inner country because they assume that there is no infrastructure. So you'll find someone that has not rotated, has been remaining in Kinshasa. So it was giving a trouble to manage the career of magistrates across the country. So there was a need from the Superior Council of Magistrates of a solution that will facilitate the management of the magistrates and officers in the justice sector. Then the third solution that is developed is SIGAJ, which is called the Judicial Activities Management Information System. It's actually like a case management system that is deployed in courts and in jurisdictions so that when there is a case, there is a new case that comes in, you are able to see the people that are involved in the case. You are able to know what's the case about, who is managing the case, at which stage the case is, and you will know also what is the conclusion of a particular case. The fourth solution that was developed was an integrated criminal records management information system, because again, the criminal records office is mainly everything is still manual. So when you have to trace the criminal record of a particular person 30 years back, people are not able to go to the archives because it's full of dust. Sometimes it's not easy to find, and the conditions in which files were stored were not good. And so it was difficult. Everybody, even criminals, after some years, because no one can go back in the criminal record archive, will just have a clean criminal record. So that was an issue. So these are the 4 tools that were developed. The goal was to reduce the effect of human management, to digitalize cases, to be able to trace where cases are and at which level they are. On the second slide, the process that led us to get to these 4 solutions, which you will see on this red graphic that I designed. You see in the middle, it's Boende Malam. In there, you have the 4 solutions that were developed. So how did we go about it? It took political will and commitment for us to get there. And on that note, there has been the adoption of, you can see the legal foundations, there's been the adoption of the National Policy on Justice Reform since 2017. But even before this, there were other efforts that were done at political level. There was also the organization of the National Conference on the Fight Against Corruption. These are the 2 main activities that laid the foundation or gave a way for us to build this solution. So there was a political will that was already there. Then for us to have the solution, we needed also to train people, because after the solutions are developed, you need to have people that can train others. The solutions need to be used by users. And we went through the training of trainers process, and so that we trained trainers and we took them from among the users. We didn't take people from UNDP because we thought that it's easy for people to relate to other users like them. If you take someone who's already working, is working in a court, is training another colleague who's working in a court, it will be easy for them to relate to each other, and it will be easy for them to learn. So the training process, it's an ongoing process. You will see that maybe the arrows, the way I did them, I was supposed to do going back on both sides. It's a continuous thing. It's not something that you do at step 1, then you move to step 2, or you go to step 3. No, it's a continuous thing. Continually, you need to be looking at political will and commitment. Always go back and check. Make sure that there's no change. If there are change in the text or the regulations, you need to make sure that you advocate, you do some lobbying at high level. Training, you need to do it all the time because people move from offices to offices. You need to make sure that every time there is a need for new training in a particular area where you deploy the system, you are there to train the people. The financial and technical support, it's also very critical, because a user can be stuck because it did something, or the password was not working, or the computer crashed, or there's no electricity, or the solar panel crashed also. We provided for IT equipment, but we also provided for solar equipment, because in the particular context of DRC, we have energy issues, and we don't always have computers everywhere we want to deploy the system. So as part of the project, we had to provide IT equipment, and we also had to provide solar equipment. And that technical and financial support needs to be there all through the project to ensure that you can always respond whenever there is a demand for new users or for new connection. And then all of these that we did, we made sure that you can just come back again on that previous slide, thank you. We made sure that we do development and putting the users at the center. We use the human-centered approach to ensure that when there is a request, we always go back to the people. We did some workshop with the users to ask them, how do you see the system? Is it responding to your legal procedures and needs? If it's not, then we have to change it. We have to, the programmers need to be able to rework it to put a new version. And all of that, we did it with $380,000, buying computers, buying IT solar equipment, deploying the team, training the trainers, organizing workshop 3 days to 5 days per site. On the last slide that is going to be shown right now, you'll see that we on the yellow dot are the provinces where we deployed. We deployed in 12 provinces, but in 14 cities. Now, for you to have an idea of how big the country is, from if you can see the dot 26, that's Kinshasa, where I am right now. If you see the dot 15 on your right-hand side, it's Bukavu, Goma. That's where the war is right now. Now, the distance between one side to the other is 2,000 kilometers. There's no way that we did that by road. We always went by plane in all of these places, except the 26 and the number 4, because they are linked by road. So, and we took the team of trainers in all these places. We train people. As of today, we are above 300. I was being corrected by Serge, my colleague, this morning. We are above 300 users that were trained and over 100 computers that were bought, routers, webcams, plugs, solar panels, batteries. We deployed them in all these yellow dotted places that you see there. And they are functional and they are working. One thing that I want to mention, to ensure that we are always in contact with the users, we created a WhatsApp group. Once we go in a specific city and we train the people, we put all of them in a specific WhatsApp group. So on a daily basis, when there's an issue, we know where the issue is and we know what the kind of support we need to give. When we still had Tatiana on our team because she resigned, Tatiana, as the head of experimentation, will go after we have deployed all the solution to collect data about how people are using it, what are the experiences. So that's what we did in DRC. The government has adopted it. There's been shift in the laws. Today, we are talking about digitalizing not just the justice sector, but also the entire government. We have been entrusted as UNDP to facilitate the digital codes to be known by everybody. And now what we are working on is to make sure that each of these dotted yellow places are connected with fiber or with, because to facilitate the transport of data. Because as of now, their data are produced, but locally. So now this year and next year, we'll be working into networking these places to ensure that data are centralized. So that's a big picture of what we have been doing in DRC. I hope I kept time. I'm open to your questions, colleague. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Olivier, for that very, very comprehensive presentation, but also the comprehensive approach to how you approached the innovation that you were introducing in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And a huge congratulations to you and the team. And I say this, I mean, completely aware of the complexities that you face when it comes to programming in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, least not because of just the conflicts that are going on in Kivu and the Southeast district that you mentioned earlier on, but also again, it's a vast country. Infrastructure is really not at its optimal, and here are some of the most important and interesting innovation being done to make justice accessible to people that we have been working on. And I wanted to say, based on what you were saying, I think one of the key aspects, which I think I should have also have put well up front, is about how also these innovations on justice are really intended to and meant to be very much about the people. As much as we work with and strengthen institutions, but the point about how strengthening institutions is done in a manner that allows people to be the focal point of these justice innovations is an important aspect, and hence the work that as UNDP we are championing on people-centered justice. And recently we completed a people-centered justice policy framework, which we will share with all of you in the coming week or so that again it becomes also a good point of reference as you continue to do this innovative justice work, and you begin to bring all these integrated, complex elements, working with institutions, working with communities, but addressing complexity in a very specific and nuanced way, and which is already some of the very key nuggets that you shared in this presentation. So thank you so much, and really appreciate the work that you are doing. With that said, I would like now to transition our conversation to our colleague from Ecuador. Our colleague from Ecuador is Paulina Jimenez, who is the head of solutions mapping. And Paulina is going to come and illustrate and share with us some of the key innovative aspects that they have been implementing on justice work in Ecuador. So over to you for your presentation. Thanks.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, colleagues. I would like to start by giving a little bit of context about the project that we collaborated in, which is the Spotlight Initiative. And this initiative is a joint effort by the European Union and the United Nations, and its purpose is to end all forms of violence against women and girls. In the case of Latin America, the project is focused on eliminating femicides. And in Ecuador, this initiative is carried out by 3 UN agencies, UN Women, the United Nations Population Fund, and UNDP. So can we go to the next slide, please? Ecuador is part of this initiative because of its high rates of gender violence. In 2024 alone, there were 274 femicide victims. Many of these victims were mothers, and they left behind 131 orphan children. So in Ecuador, the reality is that a woman is killed every 44 hours. I think we had, more than enough reasons to be participating in this project. Next slide, please. So in Ecuador was, invited to, the ACT Lab was invited to participate in this project from the very beginning, and I think that was really an important opportunity in its design. The UNDP leads this project in 2 pillars. One pillar is aims at strengthening institutions, and the other pillar, pillar number 5, aims at improving data quality. So reliable, high-quality data in a context of criminality and violence is fundamental to inform laws and policies. Femicides in Ecuador are already underreported, so accurate data collection is definitely a priority. And when we were asked to design an intervention for this pillar, we wanted to focus not only on statistics, but on qualitative data. Because we see that numbers alone, they don't tell the whole story. And to truly understand gender violence, femicides, and how the justice system handles them, we needed to listen to the families and to the victims. So that's where Other Maps initiative came in. This is a social cartography tool that helps families map, document, and share their experiences. By georeferencing key locations with testimonies, photographs, or short videos, they created maps with paths of memory, injustice, community response. So in collaboration with Fundación Aldea, we created 15 story maps across 8 different cities. Next, please. So yes, through this initiatives, families, they were able to meet, share their stories, and connect over their losses, but also over their fight for justice. Each family, they spent an entire day walking through the city or sometimes rural villages with organizations, feminists, allies, and stopping at significant locations where their daughters or sisters, nieces, they lived, worked, or were last seen. These places were georeferenced and they were resignified. Sometimes they were transformed into small shrines, this way keeping the memory alive. And you can visit the maps in this links that I will be putting in the chat next. Next slide, please. So one of the most troubling findings was that none of the 15 families we worked with had fully access to justice. Not one family had received any form of reparation. And there were and there were very few convictions. Most perpetrators either walked free or they remained fugitives. Our data analysis was confirmed with a diagnosis that we did using interviews, surveys, and also by looking at sentences. We analyzed sentences and we found that 51% of sentences for gender-based violence offenses ended in acquittals. So this data is, very worrisome because it suggests that many reports of violence against women simply do not result in any legal consequence. Next, please. Yeah, these findings pushed us to rethink how justice officials are trained, to rethink capacity building trainings. So instead of simply memorizing laws and procedures, we needed to shift mindsets to challenge gender biases because those acquittals have to do with gender biases, with stereotypes in most of the cases. So to promote fairer rulings and strengthen the justice system for victims, we created a gender-focused training model aimed at attitudinal change by including stories of flowers in the air, the stories of the victims. 77 out of 472 judges have been trained. 474 prosecutors also have been trained using flowers in the air stories. And the training is now expanding to 100 more judges through an online course. The goal is to move beyond, the legal technicalities and bring justice professionals closer to the human impact of their decisions, especially how justice system that fails a woman is also failing communities. So next, please. It's important to say that this was a bottom-up approach to connect people to policy. Firstly, it was about, community immersion. We wanted to know where are the families, what is their experience with the justice system, and who is actually responding to gender violence in the absence of institutional action. And we found, that civil society organizations, despite very few resources, they were providing critical support services. These organizations, they connected us with families, and from there, we built the story maps. The underlying idea was, if the personal is political, then how do we show that a femicide is not just a personal tragedy, but it's a societal failure? So for that, we visualized the body as a territory connected to a larger space, a neighborhood, a city, or a community. And we wanted to show that these women were part of our daily journeys and our daily routines, that they walk the same streets and plazas we do, but they are no longer with us. So this was an attempt of collectivizing grief to show that each femicide is not an isolated case, but it's a phenomenon that affects all society. Then we, moved on with these stories to amplify them. Flowers in the Air was shared in press conferences, social media, and public events. Universities began using these stories in classes and for academic events. And then we connected these voices to policy design and institutional training. Institutions started engaging with our findings, and the stories began to inform institutions and policies, such as the integral repair policy, and the judicial system training programs. Can we move on to the next, please? So when dealing with processes of loss, pain, and mourning, we had to be extremely mindful of ethical considerations. The last thing we wanted to do was to unintentionally re-victimize the participants. And this required, a very thoughtful approach, one that balanced acknowledging their difficult experiences, but also providing visibility for their demands. Another difficulty was fitting, in-person training into very packed schedules. Many participants were engaged in hearings and other judicial duties, and that made it tough to set aside dedicated time for learning. So it was important to convince that these trainings were not, an additional burden, but worth prioritizing over immediate judicial responsibilities. So we had to demonstrate that, its long-term benefits. We had to ensure that the sessions were engaging, that they were relevant to their work, to get the judicial system, schools buying. In some cases, security concerns also added another layer of complexity, because in Ecuador's criminal context, some judges face threats and require bodyguards during travel, and that meant logistical planning to account for their safety. And finally, moving interactive content to a virtual format is not as simple as just shifting materials online. We had to rethink engagement strategies, ensure that the virtual sessions remain dynamic, participatory, and impactful. And for that, we are currently innovating with digital tools, testing, and incorporating mentors. So next, please. Okay, so for next steps, a key milestone ahead is integrating our training model into the judicial system schools' long-term curriculum. This means that instead of being like a one-time effort, the training will be part of an institutionalized learning path, ensuring continuity and sustained impact for the years to come. And then looking forward, we're not just maintaining our current work, we're actually growing it. And the goal is to expand, adapt, and integrate what we've learned into the upcoming 5-year Access to Justice project funded by the Canada government. And finally, we'll be actively involved in the open justice interventions, particularly in the design of experiments and innovative approaches. That's what we're currently doing with the governance area. And I believe that the governance area has leveraged the Accelerator Lab's, R&D function and its contribution to make justice more open, inclusive, and effective.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Paulina. This was really, really, really comprehensive, very insightful. But I think one of the key aspects that is quite illuminating from the work that is being done in Ecuador is the layers and layers of innovation. So really in terms of how you worked with the people and the communities and how all of that, usually we use the word trickle down, but in a way cascaded upwards to influence institutions, to influence policies, to influence communities in a very, very important and profound manner. And in many ways, this particular way of engaging with the innovative aspects that you've articulated is so much in line with quite a number of the elements on people-centered justice and security too, because really we're talking of violence, right? We're talking about levels of insecurity that the communities and the women are facing and the high levels of femicide. How do we bring those elements together, but at the same time, doing it in such a way that it is people-facing, people-centered, and not necessarily just facilitating institutional efficiencies alone. And I really, really appreciate the way that you've also articulated how you worked on bringing different aspects of the system. I liked the last aspect on the next steps. I think sustainability of innovation. Oftentimes, is a challenge. You know, it can be exciting at the very beginning, but then how do you make sure that you sustain? And I think thinking long term, the way that you've presented the case study for Ecuador is really a best example for all of us to learn from, and also to be further shared, I think, even beyond the participants in this call. Thank you so much. And again, you complement very, very well Olivia's messagings. Two different countries, two different contexts, but you can see some of the similarities in approaches. We are going to move on, colleagues, to our last country presentation of today. And this is coming to a country very close to my heart because it's Eswatini, close to a country where I come from, Zimbabwe. And I am very happy to call in Zandile Mthembu, who is the head of experimentation, who is going to speak to us about also the innovative work that is being done in that country. Over to you, Zandile.
Thank you. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to also tell our justice innovation story for, Eswatini as the ACLEB. And I also just wanted to acknowledge my colleagues in the ACLEB, Mavi and Nontobeko, who were very much instrumental in actually getting this off the ground, particularly right at the beginning when things were extremely tough. So I'll just start off by sharing the story of Eswatini back in 2022 during the COVID pandemic. We were facing some challenges, across the globe, including Eswatini, where we started to notice that the judiciary had serious backlogs in terms of access to justice, particularly on what they normally call petty crimes. Criminal justice crimes, where a person that is accused is expected to appear, is actually held at the police or station, or maybe held in custody in one of the correctional service facilities, and then expected to undertake a process of seeing the judges and the magistrate until their trial date is set. And this process is called remanding. And through our colleagues' engagements, because we've got a governance portfolio within the current CPD portfolio of projects, our colleagues in governance, as well as the newspapers that we were reading, when we started to realize that this was an opportunity for us to come in and see how can we come up with a solution that can facilitate efficiency, because one of the things that our current CPD is looking to address under the governance pillar is to enhance governance efficiencies through operational efficiencies as well. That is one of the main objectives. So as the ACLEB, we looked at what the digital innovation that we can come up with to assist in this regard. But then this wasn't just a standalone initiatives, because there was an electronic case management project that the governance unit was just trying to set up and get off the ground. And one of its elements was speaking to this judicial process in terms of how do they then document some of these remand trials, cases, and record them, so that when the person stands trial, they are able to use that as part of the evidence during their trial. We can go on to the next slide. And so the the governance unit and us worked. We worked in a we have the convenience of being a very small country office in Eswatini, with a very tiny programs team. So it's easy for us to collaborate and discuss some of the programs that are ongoing. One of the things that we leverage on with the relationship that the governance unit had already established through the Ministry of Justice, the Human Rights Commission, and the Law Society, as well as the technical teams within the judiciary that are facilitating some of these day-to-day activities, whom are the makers and actual breakers of certain new innovations that are being brought into their daily way of doing things. So one of the things that we leveraged on was to ensure that our governance unit is fully equipped and, to be able to address the Chief Justice on this idea that we had to experiment, because one of the lessons that during the explorations that we picked up was Eswatini had already gotten infrastructure for radio frequency that was set up across the country. But due to lack of regulations, they were unable to actually test or maybe implement digital courts. And then somewhere around 2018, the regulations were put in place, but still there was just that small they lacked the catalyst to actually get it off the ground and implement it. So when we came on board as the ACLEB and started to engage with the colleagues in the judiciary, we learned that there were certain pieces of the digital infrastructure that were missing to enable this digital courts thing to start working. So we kind of supported them just to start off by looking at what is missing, what needs to be replaced. And then by the time we were ready to start an experiment and implement, it was around 6 months into the exploration process, which was quite a long time. But it was all well worth the effort, because one of the things that we pride ourselves about was that we were able to, convince one of the highest officials in the judiciary, who is the Chief Justice, so that he is able to put together practice directives for this digital transformed way of doing remanding. And then the impact on our side was that, there's this, I want to go back and borrow some words that we took from our colleagues in the ACLEP in Lesotho, that scaling up and scaling out. And the excitement around it was that, after we started the experiment, we then started to do a monitoring of the system, and then we started the implementation in 2023 around January, and we monitored it for a period of 10 months. And an average of 80 cases were actually remanded virtually in that period, and that made for about 799 cases that were remanded virtually. For us, that was a big achievement, and the impact was not just on the digital transformation component, but as well as the costs that are associated with a traditional remanding session, where you move a person accused from the prison or where they are held to a magistrate court. That involves several officials to make sure that there's enough security, there's transportation, sometimes meals, and all of those things. But through this process, they were able to realize some cost reductions through this process. And if you are talking about 80 people on average that need to go through these sessions, can imagine the amount of money that was spent on it. So what we then learned was what was then exciting about this experiment, and in terms of the scaling up and scaling out concept, was that over the year 2023 and into 2024, the judiciary, if I could put it that way, then started to explore how then to scale such a process into other courts. So, for example, in Manzini, Manzini is the most congested prisons, if I can put it that way. Around 400 people are held and need to undergo these remanding sessions. So they rolled it out to Manzini firstly, and then after it succeeded, it went on to another region, which was Nhlangano, and then now they are rolling it out this year. They have updated us that they're rolling it out in the last region. So in Eswatini, we've got 4 regions, and each of those regions are now switching to the digital remand sessions because of the learnings and the initial, support that we provided right in the beginning of the experiment, right at the start in Babane. So the challenges, yes, we did have several challenges, I must say. one of which was the long period in which to get the engagements off the ground. You can imagine Chief Justice is one of the highly respected people in the judiciary, and it wasn't easy for us to get through. Even we had to get the support of the RR, for example, to even engage with him and even set up some proper guidelines, as well as partnership agreements on how this is going to go on about. And then also the change management component was also another challenge, because we were moving the magistrate team as a whole, the clerks and the officers and so on, from a traditional way. I'll call it traditional because it's non-analog, where people were being remanded in physically, and now they had to transform to a digital platform and do the same thing in a sense. So they had to transform even the way that they record the sessions, the way that they manage the session and conduct it. Then the monitoring component of it was quite interesting, because we had to reiterate throughout, and eventually the IT colleagues in the judiciary, as well as the correctional services, then came up with another way of monitoring the occurrences of those sessions, that they were able to pick up all these sessions through a back-end system that was part of the remote remanding package. And then in that way, it was easy for us to start monitoring in a much more digital way than relying on documents as a whole. So right now, where we are quite excited to learn that it has been a positive contribution to the electronic case management system, as well as also learning that it has been, scaled to other cities and other magistrates is a plus. I'll move on to the next slide. So as I end, I think my parting shot will be very short. And then if you look at the numbers here, like I mentioned, that Manzini was the next remand court that was put into remanding. It was it's the one that has the largest criminal justice inmates that I held. So it was quite interesting that this was one of the remand sessions that were digitized because of its busy traffic and so on. And so now, if you're looking at the numbers and the efficiencies that they started to realize, it was quite inspiring that it had to be rolled on throughout the country. So I just want to let my colleague Linda, who's also the governance specialist, to come in and add a couple of things before I run out of time.
Thank you, Zandi. I think you've basically covered all the bases. I will more than happy to answer questions if there's any additional things that are not as clear to colleagues. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Zandile and Lindy, for that presentation, and really, again, putting to the table and showing how the needle moves, when you adopt also digital innovations to transform a justice system from an analog system, paper-based, and to improve its effectiveness and its efficiency when you introduce these digital technologies. But I think also, quite importantly, from the highlights that you have shared with us, that it is also about incremental steps. I don't think you can change everything in one go, but getting the buy-in, in particular the political buy-in of the heads of the institutions that we are working with, is critically important. I heard you also mention the law society as one of the users of the justice systems, and oftentimes doing this on behalf of their clients and the people. And I think that is, again, I think a key and important element to take into account whenever we are rolling out these systems. And I think I would be one of the first ones also to admit candidly that sometimes I think when systems are not rolled out in a way where that political buy-in is ingrained from the very beginning, or where that commitment of resources is also not made, sometimes the sustainability of the system is very, very short-lived, or it's not guaranteed at all. But very much congratulations to you, colleagues, for this innovation and how it is significantly also driving results, specifically also for SDG 16.3. For SDG 16 broadly speaking, and also for SDG 16.3. So thank you so much for that work. So colleagues online, we have come to the end of the presentations relating to the very specific country examples that we had invited to join us. And I would like to open the floor for any questions, points of clarifications, any additional experiences that you may have from your own country experiences that you may want to put on the table. Everything it's an open space, and I know it's a space amongst the colleagues, and please feel free to raise your hand and share, or just to simply unmute yourself and share any of the innovations that you may also be working on, thinking about at country level. And if you have any questions, also please feel free to do so. I'm just checking the room, and maybe perhaps Roman and Eduardo, you can help me to check the room in case I miss any hand or any comments that may possibly have been shared along the way as the presentations were ongoing. So over to you, colleagues. Please do feel free. No question is too small or too big. I think it's about our continuous and collective learning, and that's the importance of this kind of space. I am checking again. I don't see any as yet, so I'll keep speaking. I'll keep talking until somebody comes in. I see, yes. Tiffany, would you mind coming in? Would you mind coming in with and sharing some of the thinking that we have from Thailand?
Yeah. Okay. Hi. Sorry, I'm still like on the roof, so you may hear like the sky train in the background. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. So maybe like first thing first, like thank you very much for the session and sharing. I think it's really interesting to learn about the experiences and the work from everyone. So maybe a little bit about what we're doing is that right now Thailand Policy Lab. So just a bit of background. Deep Lab is the collaboration between UNDP Thailand and like the Thai government, and then we are working on the policy transformation. So one of the areas of work would be the thematic area of rule of law. Sorry, and then we are working with the Thailand Institute of Justice. We're actually still in an early stage of planning, but then we hope to see changes in terms of like governance. We want to see change in terms of like in more
¿Y quién es ella?
inclusiveness.
Mi mamá tiene problemas de cervicales, que...
And criminal justice over government and so on. Yeah.
Sorry,
So
Roman,
maybe
I think you can mute the other participants manually just to avoid the dubbing of voices. Sorry,
Yes.
Tiffany.
Okay,
Yeah.
let me mute then. Sorry, apologies. Please go ahead.
not at all. So yeah, so maybe like in brief, it's like we're planning with the TIJ so that we can see like changes in the rule of law and like justice transformation in Thailand. Hopefully there would be more sessions that we can brainstorm and exchange in the future. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Tiffany. And for colleagues who may know already and coming from Asia Pacific, I think Thailand Institute of Justice is also one of those key innovators in the justice space, and also a key partner of UNDP. So really looking forward to your work. And we are here and available to support you together with, of course, our regional colleagues, Simone, Apana, and others sitting in Bangkok. Martha, over to you. Martha Agaba.
Thank you very much, Hervai, and for all the colleagues who have ably shared their experiences and the work they do. It's very brilliant work, and hopefully we can get a chance to reach out to some of our colleagues in those countries to get a better or deeper sense of how they started and, how they are progressing. So my question basically is on the sustainability of some of these innovations. I know, River, you clearly stated it that funding is reducing for some of these innovations, and we know innovations are costly. So as I listened in from colleagues from other countries sharing their experiences, I'm just keen to get to know how they are dealing with the whole aspect of because most of them are dealing with government institutions, judiciary, prisons, and all these other legal institutions being managed by government. And how do they deal with the buy-in, like for these institutions to appreciate the innovations and then take them forward? Yeah. That's what I wanted to inquire about. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Martha. I will pack that question for our panelists. We will hear from Naomi, and if there are other questions, then we will take them before going back to the panelists. Yes, Naomi?
Good morning, colleagues. I'm Noemi. I work at UNDP Ecuador. Many thanks for organizing this event. It's very insightful. Many thanks to colleagues for presenting their experience. As Paulina said, in Ecuador, we're going to implement soon a 5 years project to improve people's access to the judicial system with a focus on vulnerable and excluded groups. And as in the survey at the beginning of the event, we mentioned the mobile courts. Which appears to be a great tool to give excluded people, marginalized people access to the judicial systems, because sometimes they're kind of geographic issues, other more like structural issues that prevent some marginalized groups to access the judicial systems. It seems to me a very interesting tool, and I would have loved to hear from some of the participants' experience, if they have some great examples or good practices to share that could also inform our work here in Ecuador. Many thanks again for organizing this space.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Naomi. And I do know that, yes, there are colleagues who've been working on mobile courts. I think in terms of the poll that we had today, I think about 9% of colleagues in the room mentioned that. So please feel free, for those who are still in the room, to raise your hand and share your experiences. It doesn't have to be all, positive, less positive processes going forward, but it could also be the challenges, so that colleagues who are trying to replicate the same models of innovation can then be able to be more informed about what works and what doesn't work, and also how to overcome some of the challenges. I'm looking across the room to see if there are any more questions, and if not, let me go back to our panelists, the question around sustainability, and also that innovation can be expensive or is expensive. Perhaps the question is, are all innovations expensive or costly? Are there ways of innovating which are not necessarily costly, or maybe costly at the very beginning, but in the long term, you actually are able to cut cost once the system is taken root and is functional, is well embraced, and there is that political buy-in to make it work. For example, installing a digital case management system, for example, at the very beginning, getting the software, getting the computers, doing all that training, absolutely does sound quite costly and expensive. But if we look at it in the bigger picture, is it really the case? So I think we need to get to hear from our colleagues. I don't know, Olivia, can I start with you, and then I go to Paulina, and then to Zandile, in terms of your experiences?
Riva, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. No, thank you very much for the question. Yes. At the beginning, it sounds, it always sounds expensive. I even swear it is a colleague, one of the African countries, that have approached me showing me the cost of the development of the tools that they were given as UNDP, and the cost is just too much. The approach we use is to capitalize on the internal knowledge within UNDP, because that's where it started. It reduces the cost of development. And then we relied on the network of innovators of the Accelerator. Because remember, as the Colab, we do work with the ecosystem of innovators, and they are able to, you know, we will say the cost is a bit cheaper than hiring a specialized unit or an organization to develop the case management, and the flexibility that comes with using people from the ecosystem, the young people that we have, it reduces the cost. As I said, it costed us less than 400,000 US dollars to actually develop the system, deploy the system, acquire the IT and the solar equipment. In 12 provinces, 14 cities were covered, and would always travel by air with a team of between 6 to 8 people. That will be, we pay DSA for, and all that was included in the 400,000. So meaning that if we're not traveling, we could have reduced again the cost. So yes, there's a possibility to have the developments done at a cheaper cost if we can capitalize on the pool of expertise that ACLAB gathers in each country. And yeah, that's my answer in terms of cost. We did it, it worked, so I'm sharing it.
Thanks so much, Olivier. And Paulina, on sustainability, perhaps, because I think you were already getting into that point towards the end of your presentation.
Yes, thank you. Actually, we worked, because I mentioned the bottom-up approach, so we worked with communities and with the institutional level. So I mentioned, that these training programs will be part of a long-term curriculum. But in terms of sustainability at a community level, I think that's also an important one. Once you get in contact with families, they require, like accompaniment. And we had families requesting doing more maps, of memory, and obviously that was something difficult because initially we had an external team of person, specialized in georeferencing and maybe people that know how to upload this information on digital maps. So what we did is we democratized the tool. We created a toolbox, which is a digital public good, which is a very low cost solution for people who wanted to use maps for any other topics, not only for memory routes, but also, to map different problems or solutions. And this toolbox is also in the same webpage. I will also reshare the link. It uses basically a plugin that is that you have to install it into a WordPress, which is also like a low cost and open source site. And it combines it with Kobo Toolbox. So it's a set of different low cost open source tools that make it very accessible. We've trained some civil society organizations in the use of this toolbox. So that's one type of tool that we have designed to make sure that people can continue doing these maps at a very low cost, and that it's a very easy tool to use. So that's one example. And then another thing is, in the question they mentioned, getting the buy-in. I think it's important to mention the Accelerator Labs methodology. We have like this experimental approach. So we don't go and do big from the beginning. We always try, we test, and we find the evidence if it works or if it doesn't work. That's something really important because we, make sure that we have indicators, measurement indicators of what changed, what was the impact of the intervention. And with that evidence, then we get the buy-in. I think that's something really important. And another thing, thinking about costs and sustainability is the portfolio approach. Because when we think of justice and a portfolio approach, we know that it's a multidimensional problem. It requires a lot of interventions and investment and big investment. But we're, a lot of these interventions have been connectors of other, other projects, connectors of a wider system. And we're seeing that it's important, like one project perhaps pulls or motivates the design of a different one. And we understand that although access to justice is very, very important, it's also about prevention because we sort of like make the comparison with the health sector, for example. It's not about making more hospitals because it's about having people becoming sick less, being more healthy. Same thing with the justice system. It's not about more judges and more judicial units. It's about having a fairer society, a more fair society, of having less violence. So this approach makes things less costly. Obviously, if you don't intervene in prevention, in the long term, it's going to be more investment. So I think the portfolio approach really also helps us, not work in silos, see the whole picture, and design other types of interventions as well. Mm-hmm.
No, this is really, really excellent, Paulina, what you are sharing. In fact, you have quite upped on the point around prevention. And I think this is exactly the language also within the Crisis Bureau of UNDP, and I think within across all our regions and country offices, that I think, number one, let's prevent. And then number two, let's react and respond and recover, and then continue the sustainable development. And I think this is critically important. And I think that particular lens on prevention, I think it's one which we need to find a way of applying right across. And when I share, hopefully, as I promised, in a week or so, the people-centered justice and security policy paper, you also see that language on prevention being critical. And part of this also comes from a very important observation that was made during the evaluation of UNDP's justice work, which was done in 2022, 2023. So there was this huge global evaluation. Some of your country examples were brought into this evaluation exercise as well. And a key component that was also mentioned was justice is really not about responding to the challenges and ensuring that remedies are given and remedies are enforced, but it is also about that preventative aspect. And the second component, which I just want to emphasize also from what you are saying, which brings again the cross-team collaboration aspects, is the work of the Justice Colab, Justice Futures Colab and the Justice teams, the work of the Aclabs, which a lot of it also does work on e-justice, and also the work of the Chief Digital Office, which is also making quite a lot of effort on coming up with digital public infrastructure or digital public goods. Part of that effort also being to minimize the cost of rolling out these innovations. And I think, again, I see all that significantly coming together. And again, part of our intention as we have these kind of discussions is to bring these pieces together. I will stop here for now, colleagues. I know we have only a few minutes before we finish, and I would like to really give time to Gina, who is our head of ACLEBS in UNDP, the one that started it all and has been driving this huge wave of change across UNDP, so that she could come in and share her reflections on the conversation today, but also, if possible, even broader in terms of what we are doing and where we can take this forward. Gina, over to you.
Thank you so much, Revi. And thank you, Paulina, Zandili, and Olivier, and the teams in Ecuador and Eswatini and Democratic Republic of Congo. I had known of these stories, but it's amazing to hear them, in depth and together to look at them at a frame under this, the Justice Futures Colab frame. This has been really, really rewarding, and thank you for that. So let me just say three things. I always have three. First, just to say, I think we've shown here the power of collaboration, and kind of where, on a critically important issue, as justice, so broadly, what could be more important than that? This is not a new issue. This is an issue that is increasing in complexity due to its intransigence, due to, certainly there are opportunities like digitalization, which can be exploited, but there's also, cultures of impunity and growth of crime, and just, the rate of femicide in Ecuador, I think, just sits on my mind, and the thought of how heavy that is. So this is a good example of collaboration, because this is not a new issue, right? Innovation is often thought of as something that, there's something new and emerging and we don't know what to do about it yet. Here we have an issue that UNDP is known for engaging with. It will continue to engage with in its future strategic plan. And thank you, Roman and Revai, for sharing with us, the context in which you operate, in terms of decrease of funding, right? Increase of complexity and decrease of resources. So it's really good to see the collaboration here. My second point here is, I think we heard a few patterns on what innovation can add to ongoing efforts in justice reform, that are underway well before there were accelerator labs, and before we even framed things as innovation or research and development. I think what I heard today are, first, I think that innovation here helps make the invisible more visible, right? So when it comes to the data that is lost due to paper records, when it comes to the stories and the grief and the loss of femicide, when it comes to the length and the human burden of remand and the delays in the justice system, I think that you all have created new data, user testing data, qualitative data, ethnographic data, experimental results data, which is really making those invisible parts of the justice system more visible. So that's first. The second is, you've kind of tapped into off the radar assets, right? Yeah. Assets that are out there that maybe we didn't think existed, right? And we feel we're in this fight alone. So in terms of, solar panels for the justice system in DRC, or using digital reform to drive transparency, to drive change management and among the magistrates, the ecosystem mapping in Ecuador in terms of gender-based violence assets for women that again might not be formal assets but are there. So I think that's another value added, is making assets which are there and can help us, that are off the radar, easier to tap into and easier to see. And then the third is just kind of bringing in new frames in how we deal with justice, right? And how we engage in this space. So very much, looking at kind of, yes, digital training for prosecutors and judges. Okay, how do you make that meaningful, right? How do you actually grab their attention because they're busy? Even the nuanced issues of, you all have talked about working with magistrates, busy, high-level, hierarchically important people in society, who to do change management with magistrates is no easy task. So there's some sort of intangible approach there that I think has been called attention to here. And so this is something where we're bringing in kind of new frames of how you intervene in the justice space, right? The digital drives transparency, the digital drives better results for people, but we also start to see the intangible cultural elements, whether it's magistrate culture or rituals around the sites, the last known sighting of a woman who disappeared. So let me just close up by saying, I think where we go from here, this has been really extraordinary. What I would like to see, and what we've been working on globally in the Accelerator Lab Network, is taking these singular experiences and somehow figuring out how one delivers on that promise that we always say as UNDP of being this global knowledge organization, right? Where we are not so naive to think that a context-driven experiment or ethnographic work or digitalization process in one country can be copy-pasted or replicated in another place, but that there is some heuristic that can transfer and that can help us exactly solve this problem of decreasing resources towards justice work, right? Is there some way we can frame these experiences as in terms of joint resource mobilization, in terms of calling attention to this work, in terms of reframing a little bit how UNDP is known for its justice work, right? In terms of qualitative data, in terms of digitalization, et cetera. So just a call here. I think, Raman, you have, we do have some assets in this effort. So we've been working on creating access to all of our data in the Accelerator labs. That is all the experiments that we've conducted, all the blogs we've written. The labs are very prolific. All the solutions they've mapped, et cetera. And we've put together a bit of a test. It's like a Pinterest board of everything related to justice innovation. Thanks, Roman. So here you have 50 something odd experiences from Accelerator labs around the world. I'd say my call to action would be, let's have a look at this. Let's see how we can communicate this together. And let's see if there are opportunities to position UNDP using these new experiences that we've heard about here today.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Gina, for aptly concluding our session. And with that said, colleagues, this is only not the beginning. I think it's the continuation. And I think we'll definitely look forward to continuing this conversation with you as you continue to innovate, to experiment, find solutions, and to highlight those things that work. So with that said, colleagues, I know we are 4 minutes past our time, but thank you so much for your patience. Thank you so much for being part of this very, very important, interesting, and innovative conversation. And we're really looking forward to connecting with you in other spaces. But for those who have seen country offices, we have shared examples, and you want to connect, please do so bilaterally. But if you want us to facilitate, do not hesitate to reach out to us, to Roman, to Gina, and to Eduardo Casale, who is also online from the Acclab team here at HQ, and he has switched on his camera. We are very happy to work and support. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a good day, good evening, or good night ahead. I know we have colleagues from Asia Pacific who joined very, very late their nighttime. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Revi and Roman. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Bye, colleagues.
Bye-bye, colleagues.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, colleagues.
Bye. Have a great day.
Bye, all friends. See you soon.
Goodbye. Goodbye, Absalam. Roman, do you have an ending one by administrator?
Yes, one sec. Here we go. Okay. Bye, colleagues.